As the prophet of esports, I rely on trustworthy and meaningful data every day. Data from our research partner YouGov offers the most complete view of esports fans and gamers in the world, providing context to who they are, what they think, the brands they buy, and things they do. YouGov's connected insights and research services inform strategy at every level. If you're a team, a brand, agency, or rights holder, you should be talking with YouGov. Their partners measure and maximize ROI and are telling compelling stories with data. Visit yougov.com/gaming-esports to learn more.
Let's start with something a bit light. It's something I've alluded to on a couple of podcasts now, that I have not played this new game, Lost Ark. But Lost Ark is in the news, and I thought this headline was shocking, maybe I would use the word. I was not expecting this. Where the headline here is, Lost Ark passes 1.3 million concurrents, overtakes Cyberpunk 2077, Dota 2, and CSGO to become Steam's second biggest game ever, based on player numbers. So it's only the fifth game ever to pass 1 million concurrents. It reached a peak of 1.325 million. So it is now officially Steam's second biggest game ever. I mean, guys, what do we make of Amazon Games, Lost Ark, Steam in all of this? I know there's probably not a ton of meat to dig into here because we just have a few numbers, but curious predictions in terms of where this goes and what you conclude from it, whether it's about the genre of the MMO as a genre. Is it a conclusion about games in general, Steam? What conclusions can we draw from this, if any?
First conclusion I see is that gamers want something new, right? You have a big release and you have a lot of people that are playing it. It's whether or not they can sustain that I think that interest. That's the true question here, because we saw with New World, they couldn't, right? And we see with a lot of other games, Call of Duty failing 2-3 times recently, ever since the first Warzone came out. It's going to be hard, I think, too, for an MMO to really capture that interest. They have to have a really compelling story. Paul and I spoke briefly in the intro to the podcast that we recorded earlier today about community and engagement with friends. But what I see is, people that are playing other games looking for something new. Awesome that they jumped to number 2, though Cyberpunk doesn't really strike me as all that impressive of a feat. And CS:GO, I think, is it's a name we all recognize, but it's not on top of anything, right? It's just the OG in the room. So I just think there's a lot of interest for something new. It's an interest for an MMO also.
Does anyone think that these numbers are juiced? Don't mind the pun here, but that. It's easy now to get big launches because everyone just buys attention through streamers. If you go on Twitch, even now, Shroud's streaming Lost Ark, SFan Lost Ark, Grimm's Lost Ark, Fextra Life Lost Ark, right? There's just every, maybe 50% of the biggest streamers are all streaming Lost Ark. And clearly many of them are being paid. They all have drops enabled, which means, they're, you get in-game drops for watching them. Does anyone think that maybe these numbers have become artificial and not really telling or predictive of a game's success?
It's free to play, right? Or was it pay?
Free to play.
Yeah, I'll buy that a little bit, that maybe it is more efficient to launch a big game, but having said that, you still need a massive marketing budget. We don't see this with every new game launch. I think Jimmy's probably spot on that gamers are hungry for new games, and sort of maybe this slate this fall didn't get people as excited and engaged as we had kind of thought going in. So I think I'll buy a little bit of both of your arguments there. I still do think I'm surprised that we're not as hyped up about this, because I remember distinctly when we talked about New World over the summer, there was a ton of hype and people were very excited about Amazon kind of finally having a success in games. Of course, that kind of tailed off. And, I think some of us sort of foresaw that could happen. Are we now not paying enough attention to this launch because we're sort of expecting it to tail off. Because it feels to me like it being the second biggest game ever on Steam is like kind of a big deal. Like, I don't know.
And it's from Amazon Games.
Yeah.
Right?
Kind
like
of a big deal.
who we've poo-pooed.
Yeah.
But arguably 2 big launches now. 2 out of 3 call it games are successes.
Yeah.
Jeff's a great question. And I'm curious what Jimmy and Lindsay, you think. Like, is Amazon, should we be paying more attention to Amazon games?
Well, I think that they've done some really clever marketing and thought behind the games to actually get people into them at first. I do think that there is definitely a power in the free-to-play model here. That's part of it. It's so easy to just download a game that costs you nothing, whether you play it or not. And how long you play it is a different story. I guess I am unsurprised by these huge launches. I think I'm just more interested to find out what happens afterwards and to see how sticky these games are and how long they can last. So it's not that I want to undercount the launch, because having a huge launch is a big deal. I just think that's easier to accomplish right now than it might have been before. And I think that the metric that we look for now is maybe not how well the launch did, although the launch does have to reach a certain threshold of doing well, but what the game looks like 1 to 3 months out and what those player counts are like. And if they can maintain even 50% of the player counts, then it's a smash success. But I think the launch metric is not one that I would necessarily use right now to measure how successful a game is forever.
Lindsay, it's funny you say that, right? Because if we look traditionally, if you look at movies or games traditionally, right, like $60 box games, you could look at launch weekend, and people had models where you could literally know almost down to the dollar how much the game or the movie is going to do in terms of sales based purely on the launch weekend, right? What I'm hearing from you and sort of the I think I agree with it is, well, this doesn't work. These models don't work anymore. And so what is the predictor of success then, right? If it's not launch weekend, if it's not launch day, if we're saying, so that's my first question. What is the predictor of success? And second of all, what broke that? Is it the fact that it's free to play? Is it the fact that we can juice launch numbers with a bunch of streamers? Like, what has broken that in your mind? And what is the new predictor now? I don't know if anyone has thoughts.
Yeah, I'll go really quick. I think the thing that's broken it is that it's become significantly easier to market games through Twitch and through streaming platforms. So you can make a really splashy launch, and especially with a company like Amazon backing it, you can spend all the money you need to spend and get the launch numbers that you need to reach fairly easily and simply. One of the good and bad things about social media, quite frankly. You can sort of buy attention really quickly and have a lot of eyeballs on it. Then you combine that with making it free to play and lower that barrier to entry, and your numbers look stellar. So I think that there's just sort of a recipe for success there that's easily replicable, particularly if you're a huge studio with lots of money behind it. I do think that shifting away from opening weekend and kind of those box office numbers is a pretty seismic shift in how you actually do data analytics on these games. But I think that for me, one of the metrics I'd like to propose is percent retention after launch. So how many people do you retain as a percentage of your launch numbers? Maybe 1 and 6 months and 1 year out. And if you can retain, I don't know, maybe say 25% 1 year out of the second best selling game of all time, or second most downloaded game of all time on Steam, then you're doing pretty good. So I think we have to look at percent retention from these massive launch weekends. Like, how sticky can you actually make your game?
Well, you're absolutely right. Yeah, the retention's the big key. I mean, the difference now between what it was 10 years ago when it was a box copy is obviously the game that you're playing 6 months from now is not going to be the same game you're playing today. And if it is, you're going to lose because you're not going to be able to retain people. If you think about what games like Apex and Warzone and all these games do with content, I mean, you're getting new maps, new guns, new story, pretty much weekly, monthly, quarterly for years. So the game changes over time. So it is all about kind of keeping people around and retention. I'm not entirely I guess I would push back a little bit on the streamer piece. Like, I don't know if it's that much easier to market a game now than it used to be. And the only reason I say that is because it used to be you could just go to GameStop and basically, if you were EA, you would get the best shelf space and you would get into that channel. You could stuff that channel with boxed copies. And when a gamer walked into GameStop, there was 15 games they saw. And if you were one of the ones that were on that wall, that's it. You were the one that was getting bought. Does maybe streaming, paying streamers have the same effect where you have a Twitch wall and it's whatever Ninja's playing or whatever Stroud's playing? Maybe it's the same thing, but I'm not so sure. I think we've seen a lot more long tail games becoming popular in the last couple of years than we actually ever have before. So I guess I would push back a little bit.
Jimmy, any thoughts on this? Or let me just read some comments and then we'll get your thoughts and wrap it up. SEO says, yo. How are you guys doing? SEO,
Hey.
Great to have you here. Welcome. Stuart says, hey, all been a few weeks. Hope you're all doing well. Stuart, we missed you. Welcome back.
Stuart.
Kevin says, remember Hyperscape? I can't find the numbers, but at the time of release, didn't they have a lot of concurrent players week one? It's now shut down. Yeah, I mean, that was a super hyped launch. A lot of people playing. I played it. A lot of people thought that was going to be the next big battle royale. Like, you're right. It did not retain players. Reputable Hype says games are more a community now. They used to be in more of a silo. I think of it like a coffee shop. 1 year is just the honeymoon period. If they can make 3 years, that's the data that matters. I mean, true. The problem is, like, if you're looking at this from an analyst standpoint or trying to gauge, future success of a business, you don't have the luxury of like, well, let me get 3 years of data and then see how, how can we make judgment from the first 2 or 3 days of launch or the first week of launch and extrapolate out to some reasonable conclusion, right? Is my question. So with limited data, draw some relatively accurate conclusions. I'm curious, anyone in chat, if they have ideas or what those metrics might be, what the markers of success they think exist that we should be paying attention to, instead of just how many players on day one